Yeah, hi there, this is tuxache.com again. Welcome on my video channel. A couple of months ago, 2 or 3, Adobe implemented a super resolution function in their Photoshop CC app. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, this function was also implemented in Lightroom Classic. So both applications share the same function. You don't need to switch to Photoshop in order to get a high resolution image. On the other hand, there are some cameras like my Lumix G81 here or Olympus cameras, and as far as I know, some cameras from Fuji and other brands which implemented a super resolution function into the camera body by moving the sensor around just for a small amount of pixels and then calculate or render a new image from 8 or even more images. This works pretty good, so I get from my Lumix G9, which originally has around 20 megapixel, I get an 80 megapixel RAW file for further processing. But since the software implementation are AI based, it would be nice to make a comparison between the built-in function from the cameras and the Photoshop CC function or Lightroom Classic function implemented by Adobe not so long ago. So first let's go out and take some pictures with a lot of details so we can judge which function is better, the Photoshop function or the software-based function, or the function implemented into the camera bodies.
Okay, here we are on the landscape. I hope the audio is not too bad because of the wind. And now we will take the comparison pictures for evaluating which one is better, the Photoshop method or the in-camera high resolution mode. I will show you the landscape here. That's not the most beautiful landscape, but it's a landscape with a lot of details, so we can evaluate the effective resolution in the high-res mode from the camera and the Photoshop method. If we turn over here, the camera is already set on the tripod, so we can do the comparison images. So let's take the pictures, and then at home we will compare the 80 megapixel high-res from the camera, in this case the Lumix G9, and the 80 megapixel calculated from the Photoshop Super Resolution mode.
Okay, I downloaded the RAW files, and maybe we start with a regular RAW file, which is about 20 megapixel, open it in Photoshop, and this we'll call Adobe Camera Raw. And then we do the improvement for a high resolution file. It's not a pretty beautiful landscape, but it's with a lot of details. So we go here and do the enhance. Then we get the preview. And if we got the RAW file, we will open that in Photoshop, the DNG format file. Here's the DNG, and open that in Photoshop. Make a fit screen, and if we go to 100%, we get here, oh, that's 200, that's 100%, okay. And now we take this file here, which is a high resolution right away from the camera, and we open that in Photoshop 2 without any image processing. And if we go here to 100%, okay, 100, and if we go to that machine here in the background, we go here, look at here in the details. It's not bad, but I think that Photoshop is a tiny bit better. Okay, here's a side-by-side comparison where you can judge yourself if Photoshop CC version or the version from the camera is better. I think the Photoshop CC version is a little bit better, but I hope you can see the differences because of the compression of YouTube files. Okay, we take another example. Maybe we take this one. That is, as you can see, already a high resolution file from the camera. Open that in Photoshop CC. And maybe because that's a little bit dark here, we make an automatic image processing and open up the shadows and the dark areas a little bit, like this one. And then open it in Photoshop. That's only 50%, that makes it 100%. Okay, and then we do the same with the file I took on regular resolution of the camera. Open it in Photoshop and do the enhancement again, just like on the other image. Maybe we do an auto processing here again and open up the shadows a little bit more, like this one. Open it in Photoshop and do a 100% view on the image, like this. And here is the one with the with a higher resolution from the camera. And I hope you can see the differences in sharpness. Here you see a side-by-side comparison for the Photoshop and the image resulted from the camera high resolution function. And again, I hope you can see the differences because of the YouTube compression, because the differences between both methods are pretty small. As you could see in the comparison, the Photoshop or Lightroom Classic function is a tiny bit better than the raw files in 80 megapixel coming from the Lumix G9. The difference is not that big, but on fine details you get more sharp edges and more contrast. So at least the impression of the images is that they are a little bit sharper. On the other hand, you have to consider that you don't need every image in 80 megapixel. So, but on the other hand, the in-body implementation of the Lumix G9 or the Olympus cameras is not needed and has one main disadvantage. That is, if there are moving objects between the 4 or 8 shots the camera is taking in the high res mode. At least the Lumix G9 tried to get rid of this effect with the new firmware, which added a mode to the high resolution function, and I only tried it out once and it got a little bit better. But if the Photoshop or Lightroom Classic function is better in any way, at least a little bit, you might as well just use the high res function in the camera and just make the images you need, like for larger prints or so on, in Photoshop CC or Lightroom Classic. The most advantage of this system is that you select your images which need a larger resolution, like for prints and so on. You can select first and you don't have to shoot everything in 80 megapixel just to be sure you have enough material for larger printouts. So at least both functions are a little bit better than the manual function, taking by hand 4 or 8 images and render them together in Photoshop CC, a function that I showed to you a couple of months ago. So my advice is just use the function implemented in Photoshop CC or in Lightroom Classic, and might as well forget about the high-res function in the cameras. At least that will be the result of the comparison for me. If you have any questions to this, you might as well place them in the comments or in the comments of the corresponding blog post. And if this video was a little bit helpful to you, you might think about placing a like on this video. And I surely would appreciate it if you subscribe my channel, but then don't forget to hit the bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. Okay, that was my little comparison, and all I have to say, till the next time, ciao, Tux Oche.